So just be patient just for 10 minutes. This is the last conversation we will have. And with us is Ms. Ivana Jujul. She's Executive Director of Europe from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Hello, Ivana. How are you doing? Can
How
you hear
are
me?
you? It's a pleasure to be with you again.
Okay, we are running the show because we're expecting the Prime Minister, to come to the room here. So I have a few questions for you, and thank you, by the way, for being with us today. And thank you, by the way, for the support of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Also, once more, for our forum today that went pretty well. So, first question is, last year we discussed energy policies at the Southeast Europe Energy Forum. Since then, what significant changes have occurred in the U.S. energy policies that have impacted businesses and consumers?
Thank you so much for that question. And again, thank you so much for the invitation. We're really delighted to take part in this event, and it's a tremendous and really critical forum that you managed to put on year after year. So my biggest congratulations to you and to your team for the continued success. I think the biggest thing that we have seen that has the potential to impact the transatlantic energy relationship since last year has been the decision of the Biden administration to hit pause on review of LNG export licenses to countries that do not have a free trade agreement with the United States. They are doing this nominally while the Department of Energy works to update the economic and environmental analysis that took place this year. But this is one of the most sort of controversial and intensely watched energy debates of 2024 here. The Chamber believes that it is driven by election year special interests, specifically in response to certain NGOs that have tried to make LNG exports kind of a political litmus test, not unlike was done with the Keystone XL pipeline. And the Chamber and U.S. energy industry broadly have reacted very strongly in opposition to the pause on economic, on environmental, on energy security grounds. We're not the only ones. We have worked with Eurogas and Business Europe to raise strong concerns both in Europe and here in the United States. And we know that many European states are privately expressing their concerns, whether to Congress or to the administration, over the long-term energy supply implications. By the way, we're concerned that the pause could actually be permanent, de facto ban after the elections, depending on which way the elections go. So we're really looking and emphasizing the importance of supportive signals regarding the need for long-term LNG from the United States, the fact that that need could become even greater in the coming months, particularly as Europe actually eyes eliminating Russian gas imports as early as 2027. So I would say that's probably been the biggest change and the biggest focus of the work of the Chamber since last year, not an entirely positive development, but one that we hope will move towards resolution following the elections.
Well, thank you. I think you tossed the ball for another question here, which is very related. With the upcoming presidential elections in the U.S. next November, what do you foresee their outcomes? How, actually, do you foresee their outcomes will influence the domestic and global energy policies?
It's a little bit tough of a question to answer because, I think currently in the United States have two candidates that have diametrically opposed views, certainly on domestic energy policy, and really different views in terms of where climate considerations should play and how they should play into energy and energy security policy. So domestically, I think that there's a very wide gap between the candidates, and we'll see different energy policy depending on the outcome of the November elections. When it comes to the US-EU relationship, I think regardless of the outcome, there will continue to be a conversation about the US-EU energy partnership. I think this is an area where there's tremendously broad support from Republicans, Democrats, and industry. I think both sides of the political aisle here in the United States want to see the EU move away from Russian pipeline gas and increasingly Russian LNG. And so the question is, can we push for policies on both sides of the Atlantic to make that happen? And I think here we sometimes have a little bit of dissonance between the stated objective and some of the steps that are taken that really undercut that stated objective. So I mentioned on the US side, the issue of the LNG pause. I would say on the European side, we've recently seen the finalized methane regulation. The details are highly complex, and I certainly don't want to get into them now. But the rule, which has very laudable goals of cutting down methane emissions, requires detailed tracking of molecules and emissions throughout the supply chain. It's simply not possible in a diversified US system. So we've joined a number of groups with similar concerns in a letter to the Commission that we recently shared that is looking for dialogue and ultimately a workable solution. If the stated objective between both sides is to increase and broaden and deepen this economic security partnership, we certainly think that regulation that is created for a particular context and for a particular outcome shouldn't have undue impacts on again deepening that relationship. So the Commission will be holding actually a public workshop on these rules in October. If any of the companies in the room are potentially affected, we'd certainly welcome the opportunity to discuss further, and do reach out to us.
Well, thank you. During the day, we heard so many things about, different, let's say, forms of energy, from hydrogen to LNG to renewables. I want to ask you a question about the small modular reactors, the nuclear energy. What is the U.S. Chamber's view on the nuclear energy, and particularly the potential for advancements like small modular reactors? Do you foresee significant changes in this field in the coming years?
I think that we do foresee significant changes in this field in the coming years, and a real uptick and uptake of the technology in the coming years, driven simply by the reality of growing energy demand. I mean, we expect to see energy and electricity demand growing in the United States and in Europe and globally, particularly as we move further and further towards the use of AI systems. And so a wide range of technologies, whether it's LNG, whether it's nuclear, whether it's hydrogen, whether renewables, those will all be necessary components of effective energy security, industrial transition strategies, particularly for industry and hard to abate sectors. So I think, to the extent that we are seeing developments in the uptake and use of nuclear technology, something that the Chamber would certainly encourage, both domestically and in Europe. I understand that in Europe, it is certainly not a settled question. I think it's one where there's a number of different voices, whether from individual countries or from individual groups around that countries. But I think the basic reality is that we will require nuclear energy to be a critical component of both the energy security piece and the energy and climate transition piece in Europe and in the United States.
Well, a final question. You have only 1 minute to wrap up. Sorry about this, but the Prime Minister is coming to you.
That's quite all right, I understand.
What do you consider the top priority for U.S. energy policy over the next 4 years? And what do you see as the greatest threats to achieving these goals?
I think the greatest threats will be geopolitical and security. I mean, we continue to see the war in Ukraine escalating. There are a number of other global issues that have had a very negative impact on energy movements across the globe, and that could have an even worse impact. So I think the principal challenges will really be geostrategic or geopolitical. I think in terms of where the priorities are, the cooperation between the United States and the EU, I think, will have to underpin energy security and energy tradition, both within our own territories and globally. We will simply not see the level of investment, uptake of technology, trade in knowledge and innovation if we sort of siphon off our two economies. So I certainly hope that we will see a growing transatlantic trade on energy innovation. And I think frankly, it's the only path forward.
Well, Ivana, thank you very much, for being with us
you.
one again, and we look forward to see you in October when we visit DC, okay, for the AUSA.
We look forward to hosting you here. Thank you so much.
Thank you very
Elise.
much. Thank you very
Take
much.
care. Bye.
And folks, that's all was for today. The conference is over. So we're looking forward, for the next year. I think we had an excellent program, exceptional lineup of speakers. Thank you all for your patience, and let's go up and drink some wine at the roof, okay? Bye-bye.